I tested 5 car air fresheners that sit on gas station counters and detailing shop shelves everywhere, the ones people grab without thinking twice, and the most uncomfortable result wasn't that they smelled bad on the first spray. It was how fast that first impression collapsed once the product actually had to live in a closed car for more than an afternoon. One air freshener cost $1.49 and filled the cabin with something that read, "Within an hour," less like a scent and more like a chemical announcement that you'd tried too hard. Another cost $8.99 and smelled genuinely balanced on day 1, then curdled into something sour and plasticky by day 4. A third, at $12, barely registered at all after the first drive, which sounds like a win until you realize you paid $12 for a product with almost no job performance. I ran these in the same sedan, same ventilation setting, same driving conditions, over 2 full weeks, and then did the test nobody bothers with, getting into the car cold, after it sat sealed in the sun for 6 hours, when a scent has nowhere to hide. Cheap is not what a product costs. Cheap is what it still smells like once nobody's paying attention to mask it anymore. This test matters because the air freshener aisle has learned something very profitable about people who actually care what their car smells like to a passenger. It knows you don't want the obvious pine tree cardboard cutout anymore, so it sells you leather, new car, and luxury linen instead, using synthetic aroma compounds that smell impressive for the first 10 minutes, and then oxidize into something flatter and sharper than what you started with. You felt this. You bought something labeled black ice or midnight amber, thinking it would read as clean and expensive, and a week later a passenger wrinkled their nose and you had no idea why, because your own nose had already gone numb to it. Little Tree's black ice is positioned as the default upgrade from a plain cardboard pine tree, the scent people reach for when they want their car to smell cool, rather than like an air freshener at all. At $1.49 for a single tree, it uses a blend of synthetic musk, citrus top notes, and a woody base accord, printed directly on the packaging. What it does well is initial impact. For the first day, it genuinely reads as clean and slightly masculine, closer to cologne than car freshener. Then the catch arrives. The synthetic musk base is the first thing to break down chemically when exposed to heat, and by day 3 in a car that sits in direct sun, the citrus burns off entirely, leaving a flat, slightly plasticky sweetness that reads as exactly what it is: an air freshener working overtime to cover something up. The package will tell you this is long-lasting. I will tell you it lasts long in the sense that it stays hanging there, not in the sense that it still smells the way it did on day 1. Verdict: black ice wins the first sniff test and loses the actual ownership experience within 72 hours. Febreze car vent clip is positioned as odor elimination rather than scent masking, built around Febreze's proprietary cyclodextrin technology, a molecule the brand says traps odor particles rather than covering them. At $6.99 for a 2-pack, it clips directly onto an air vent and releases scent using the car's own airflow. What it does well is distribution. Because it uses the vent rather than passive diffusion, the scent feels more even throughout the cabin rather than concentrated near one spot. But then we have to talk about the flaw. The vent clip mechanism means scent intensity is entirely tied to fan speed, so on a mild day with low airflow, you get almost nothing, and on a hot day with the AC on high, it can turn overpowering within minutes, an inconsistency no amount of odor elimination technology fixes. The counter will tell you it's engineered for balance. I will tell you it's engineered for a lab test, not for the actual range of settings a real car goes through in a single week. Verdict: Febreze solves the covering up problem and creates a new consistency problem in its place. Yankee Candle Car Jar Ultimate is positioned as bringing genuine candle quality fragrance into a car, leaning on the brand's home fragrance reputation to justify a 6.49 cents price point for what is essentially a small vented jar of scented gel. It comes in genuinely complex scents like Midsummer's Night, with real layered top, middle, and base notes rather than a single flat accord. What it does well is scent complexity. On day 1, it's noticeably more sophisticated and less one-dimensional than a typical tree-shaped competitor. Here's where the real disappointment shows up. The gel base dries out unevenly, meaning the top notes, the ones giving it that complex opening, disappear within the first 5 to 7 days, leaving only the heavier, cheaper-smelling base notes behind for the remaining 3 weeks of the product's advertised lifespan. The counter will call this a slow release. I will call it a bait-and-switch built into the chemistry itself. Verdict: Yankee Candle sells you the good part for a week and the leftover part for a month. Notice the pattern forming here. Every product on this list performs best in the first few days and worst in the stretch that actually matters, which raises an obvious question. Are any of these built to last, or are they all just built to survive a first impression? Ozium Air Sanitizer is positioned differently from the rest. Marketed less as a fragrance and more as an actual air sanitizing spray, at $8.98 for a 3.5-ounce aerosol can. Using a proprietary blend, the company says neutralizes airborne bacteria rather than simply perfuming over odor. What it does well is genuine odor neutralization for specific situations. Smoke smell, pet odor, and similar strong contaminants respond noticeably better to Ozium than to any purely fragrance-based product on this list. Then the catch arrives, and it's a real one. Ozium's own scent profile, once the neutralizing effect fades after roughly 20 minutes, is sharp, medicinal, and distinctly cleaning product rather than pleasant, meaning you trade a bad smell for a different, equally unwelcome one, unless you're using it purely as a one-time reset rather than an ongoing car scent. The can will tell you this makes your car smell clean. I will tell you clean and pleasant are not the same experience, and Ozium only delivers one of them. Verdict: Ozium is the only product here honestly built for odor removal, and the worst one here if what you actually wanted was a nice ongoing scent. Before naming the winner, here's exactly how these 5 were scored, because a first sniff at the store tells you almost nothing useful. The first criterion was scent stability, meaning how much of the original fragrance profile survives after a week of real heat and airflow exposure, rather than a controlled room. The second was passenger perception, meaning how a scent reads to someone who isn't already noseblind to it, tested with 5 separate blind passengers across the 2-week window. The third was consistency across conditions, meaning whether intensity stayed reasonable across both low and high airflow rather than swinging wildly. The fourth was cost per week of genuine performance, not cost per unit, since a cheap product that dies in 3 days isn't actually cheaper than one that lasts the full month. The winner is Chemical Guy's new car smell air freshener, at $7.99 for a 16-ounce spray bottle. No hedging. It wins because, unlike every hanging or clipped product in this test, it's applied directly to fabric and interior surfaces, rather than left to passively diffuse, meaning the scent embeds into the materials themselves instead of sitting in the air waiting to oxidize. Cheap is not what a product costs. Cheap is what it still smells like once nobody's paying attention to mask it anymore. 2 weeks in, a light reapplication every 4 to 5 days kept the scent profile nearly identical to day 1, the only product in this test where blind passengers couldn't reliably tell the difference between day 1 and day 12. It wins on scent stability because the fragrance is bound into fabric fibers rather than evaporating from an exposed gel or wood surface. It wins on passenger perception because every one of the 5 test passengers independently used the word clean rather than strong or chemical. And it wins on cost per week of genuine performance because, even accounting for reapplication, it worked out to roughly 60 cents per week of consistent scent versus over $1 a week for products that had already broken down by the halfway point. An independent auto detailer I spoke with, who's serviced interiors professionally for over a decade, told me almost exactly what my own test had already shown. He said the vast majority of customer complaints about a car smelling like an air freshener, instead of just smelling clean, come from vent clips and hanging trees specifically, because passive diffusion products almost always oversaturate small pockets of air rather than distributing evenly, while fabric-applied sprays avoid that problem by design. That matched my blind passenger data almost exactly. If you're deciding what to grab, get Chemical Guy's new car smell spray at $7.99 if you want the most consistent, least trying too hard scent over a full month with minimal reapplication effort. Grab Little Tree's Black Ice at $1.49 only if you're planning to replace it every 3 to 4 days and treating it as disposable rather than long-term. Consider Febreze Car Vent Clip at $6.99 only if you keep your fan speed fairly consistent and don't mind occasional overpowering moments on hot days. Skip Yankee Candle Car Jar Ultimate at $6.49 unless you're comfortable with the good scent disappearing in week 1 while you still pay for the full month. And keep Ozium Air Sanitizer at $8.98 in your glove box, specifically for emergency odor resets, smoke, spilled food, a wet dog, rather than as your everyday car scent. What this test revealed isn't that cheap air fresheners are a scam. It revealed that most of these products are optimized for the 30 seconds you smell them in the store, not the 3 weeks you'll actually spend living with them. Before your next purchase, ask yourself a sharper question than, does this smell good right now? Would this still smell good after sitting in a hot car for 6 hours with the windows up? Tell me which of these 5 surprised you most. the black ice fading by day 3, the Yankee candle losing its best notes in a week, or Ozium trading one bad smell for a different one entirely.